Cover your ears, this podcast is cursed. We are Pop Screen, that corner of the geek show that likes to look at the good, the bad, and the inexplicable of movies, either starring by or about pop stars. No, the podcast covers a broad range of musical and cinematic genres, from country and western to hip-hop, from documentaries to science fiction. I'm your host, Graham Williamson. I'm a filmmaker who's just finished touring his BFI-funded short film, Song of the Suburbs. Hopefully there'll be a few more ways to see that if you didn't get down to any of the events, but can't say anything about that just yet. I'm also a regular writer for The Geek Show and The Geek Show Patreon, and I am joined this week by...
Hello, I am Robyn Adams. I am an actress, filmmaker, writer for The Geek Show, and Pop Screen regular. Except normally you get me on to talk about some absolute bullshit. And in this case, it is an exception.
Yeah, I think this is easily the classiest thing we've talked about since I saw the TV Glow, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
I mean, we have talked about some very good films, but they've been good films like Spring Breakers, which is, you know, many positive qualities. Classiness is not among them.
Yeah, it's Harmony Korine and Classy, I believe, have never been introduced to one another.
They have a restraining order. Harmony Korine was found going through Classy's handbag backstage at David Letterman's show.
I hate that I understand what you're referring to.
But yes, we got together because every now and then you just go to the cinema and you see your film and you think, right, that's pop screen stuff. And this is on a number of levels. It stars FKA Twigs, which ordinarily would be enough. We will do an FKA Twigs episode every April, listeners. In defiance of God's will, I will make you listen to my thoughts about FKA Twigs on a yearly basis.
So I'm guessing you've done The Crow.
We did The Crow,
yes. You've done The Crow, which I know very little on that Crow remake, other than the fact that Bill Skarsgård comes out wearing a jacket that has Goon emblazoned on it, which is horrendous.
Yes. Screenwriters, if you're listening, always check your decisions against Urban Dictionary before committing them to film.
I think about that far too regularly.
Oh, I think I've got friends who probably think about that a lot for all sorts of reasons. But yes, yeah, this is a new film from David Lowery, Mother Mary, and it's not only a film that features a pop star, it's a film about pop as it exists now. And it made me realise that that's actually quite a rare thing for a fictional movie.
Yeah, I mean, there's been other things around, but it's interesting in this kind of current cultural moment of kind of these big concert tour films. I mean, obviously they've been a thing for a while, but kind of it's this phenomenon and a kind of this almost messianic image of a pop star combined with that, which is played into in the film. You get this with things like, you know, Taylor Swift's Eras tour, and even to a lesser degree, but happening, the James Cameron directed Billie Eilish film, which is currently showing, and it's been played into by artists such as someone who is involved in this film, Charli XCX, who did The Moment earlier this year, which I've not seen, I should state. And it's kind of, there's been a few films kind of trying to play into this cultural moment, and I don't think any of them have captured it quite like this.
Yeah, I completely agree, because this is a film about a fictional pop star, which is, you know, hardly breaking fresh ground. I think people tend not to do it so much now because there's for various economic reasons, a lack of young people coming up in the film industry, and everyone's worried about doing something that's like embarrassingly dated. But I think, like, from the title down, this gets it. I think as soon as I heard this film was called Mother Mary, I thought, oh yeah, that's quite funny, really, isn't
It
it?
is. It is
Yeah.
funny. Which is weird because the film itself is utterly heart-wrenching.
Yes. I think maybe the best way to prepare people for what this is, something that A24's marketing department singularly failed at, uh, is is to talk a bit about David Lowery, the writer and director, because he's had probably the most fascinatingly odd career of any American director of his generation, I would say.
He has. He's really interesting. I would say in some ways, but not as extreme kind of, whoa, where are you going from here to there? He's almost like the American Ben Wheatley in some ways, in the sense that
Yes.
it's a bit of a one for me, one for them thing. And it's, was it possibly, he hasn't quite had his bulk yet. Just, again, I have not yet seen, but it's not quite just like, fuck you, here's my flying paper saucers. It's kind of, he goes from regularly for Disney doing these kind of live action remakes. He's like, yeah, but sure, I'll do what I'll do here. And when you see these kind of grand poetic pieces that he makes in between, these kind of often big genre films in many ways, but kind of these grand kind of moody scapes. It's just like, it's fascinating.
And I think people generally misunderstand both halves of his work, which is unfortunate. I also thought about Ben Wheatley when I was trying to think of how I would sum up Lowery's career. But I think the thing with Wheatley is when he does a big studio assignment that doesn't hit with people, and he has done some of those, you can at least sit back and think, well, maybe we'll get another Field in England or another Kill List after this. His independent work is still rightly loved, no matter what he does in between. Whereas Lowery seems to be in this odd position where, like, it breaks my heart when people talk about his Disney films as if Disney is the director.
It's a really, but don't you know about the great filmmaker A24
Yeah. His collaborations with the great director A24 are sort of, I mean, they're much better, but they also tend to also result in people scratching their head a lot. So other than The Green Knight, which seems to have connected with a gratifying and a deservedly large number of people.
in spite of the efforts of the evil Dark Lord Jeff Bezos.
Yes. And despite the COVID pandemic, which is obviously a wrench in it.
That's a fair point as well, yeah.
But I feel like that's the only one that people got. That feels like the only one which I wasn't having to have arguments about after it was released, which is a common feeling as a David Lowery fan.
I mean, I'm pretty certain. Who can remember 2017's people killing each other over a ghost story thing? That was like violence in the streets.
Yeah, so he has this sort of bifurcated career where I feel like he's underappreciated in both realms. Some people just see him as a sort of Disney studio hand, which is completely unfair. And some people just see him as that guy who makes boring movies where Rooney Mara eats a whole pie, which is also, it's more accurate, but it's also deeply unfair.
Indeed, that is deeply unfair. Though I have heard there has been some reappraisal, mostly reappraisal, not because anybody watched it on release, because they didn't, of his Pete's Dragon remake. I've heard.
I haven't seen Pete's Dragon, but I do have friends who like it a lot. Yeah. I think the one that I will always go to the wall for is The Old Man and the Gun, which I think is just a superb, beautiful, beautiful movie.
That I have heard is brilliant. I believe that one did. Again, it was one of the ones where the marketing team fucked us up, but
Yes.
that's one of the ones which I've heard has a kind of one of his films with like a better general consensus of people really like it.
Totally, yeah. I dug it out again and rewatched it after Robert Redford's death last year, and you very easily understand Redford's decision to say, right, I'm not looking for any more lead roles. I think if this is the last one, it's a great note to go out on. The one thing that I find really interesting about David Lowery is that he is an American filmmaker, a Texan, no less, who has this deep interest in the mythology of heroism and the way people construct heroes and icons, which goes all the way through. It goes all the way through The Old Man and the Gun, The Green Knight. It's certainly present in this movie, and I'm sure if I ever get round to watching Peter Pan and Wendy, I'm sure it'll be there too. And yet
Undoubtedly.
he will never ever make a Western. He's like the only American director who's interested in that as a theme, and yet he seems to have no interest in Westerns at all.
If he made a Western, it would probably be, I don't know, my favourite film of the decade.
Yeah.
But he will probably not. He'll probably not. So a team up with Ben Wheatley and he can make a Northwestern or something, which I have been tempted to do for the longest time.
Yeah, I feel like Once Upon a Time in the North is the one of those Once Upon a Time titles that no one's done yet, so it's there for the taking.
It's true, but there's always a risk it would be another Once Upon a Time in London where it's just, yo, it's about some street gangs in like Wigan.
But yeah, I mean, so that's a little setup, I guess, for the question of why someone whose last quote unquote personal movie was about an obscure side junct of the Arthurian canon is making a movie that, by his own admission, is inspired largely by Taylor Swift's Eras Tour concert film. He is interested in heroes, he is interested in idols, and he is interested in how they can be admirable while also not being quite real.
Yeah, there is really something to that, and it's again there is an aspect as with The Green Knight, which I think it parallels with, and it's another movie I adored.
Yeah.
It's very much a film about a process of self-destruction and through that kind of self-becoming.
Yes. Yeah, I think The Green Knight ends in a place which is easy to interpret as very dark. I think you can probably come up with other readings of it, but it's hard not to see it as that, at least at first.
Yeah.
Mother Mary is a much more redemptive film, I think, and it's designed as such.
I mean, the interesting thing about The Green Knight is, admittedly, I read it very much as an acceptance, which is interesting there, and that is the case here as well. It is a far more redemptive film, albeit in a way which does make you go, fucking hell, by the end. I will mention now my out of cinema reaction of it. Which is I went to see it with my girlfriend. I had not told her anything about it really. She hadn't caught the trailer beforehand. I just mentioned, is this new movie coming out? It's David Lowery. It's got Hunter Schafer in it somewhere. It looks really, really cool. Let's go and see it. And by the end, I just kind of sat in silence, stood up, walked outside, and just burst into tears on the spot. And I believe when she was comforting me, I said, fucking hell, I didn't think I had it in me to feel like that anymore. I'm going to say it now. It is my favourite film of the year so far, by a far margin.
And I mean, we should probably talk a bit about, if not the ending, then at least the feelings it leaves you with. So I know this is a very new film and a much newer film than we generally look at on Pop Screen. If you want to see the film, just be warned that we will go back and forth between the beginning and the end of the film in trying to consider what this means. I think my feelings at the end, I did also sort of feel like a weight had been lifted off me, although I don't know to what extent that weight was down to like personal things that I was carrying into it, or whether it was just when I went to see this film, I went to see it as like part of a whole day that I spent in Newcastle, where I just spent the whole day at the Tyneside. I had a lot of work recently, and I just thought I'm going to be completely self-indulgent. The Tyneside's got a ton of shit I want to see on, and I'm just going to sit there and watch it all.
Did you do the elusive Mother Mary Michael double bill?
No, not that. No, I did the Rose of Nevada Mother Mary double bill, which I think is also not inappropriate.
The grueling existentialism double bill.
Yeah. So I guess that's why it sort of it maybe didn't quite have the emotional impact on me they did to you, but I was just glad to be off that fucking trawler. Before I went into this, I checked my Letterboxd, and the last thing I saw was a friend on Letterboxd giving this 1 star, and I thought, fuck, I've saved this for the finale. What if it's going to absolutely tank? And I think the emotion the ending gave me, which is so key to like getting the whole tone of the film, is I remember sat there thinking, they can't possibly be doing this. They can't possibly be doing this seriously. And then you just get that elated feeling where you think, they are doing this seriously and it works. Which is, it's like watching a tightrope act. You know, you cannot believe that Lowery has got to the other side of this without getting a massive scar on his back, obviously.
Indeed, yes, I was thinking about precisely. And there's also the moments when I was watching it where I was thinking, there are lots of people on my university filmmaking course who will hate this from the first second. From the first line, they will despise it, and I will sit and laugh in glee at that fact because they are missing out.
I think that one of the things that has probably proved a barrier with some people is that this is a very camp film, but it's a very old-fashioned type of camp. Like I generally, when I hear people talk about camp in like online film discourse, they're saying one of two things. One, they're using it as a synonym for rubbish. It's a camp classic, means it's awful, but I like
Death on the Nile is so camp, guys. It's high camp.
Yeah. Exactly. Or it's like the other thing is superhero fans tend to use it for a movie which contains more than 2 jokes. Or it's got this really campy tone. What, you mean you laughed?
Precisely. And to be fair, James Gunn leans into that slightly from his trauma origins, but like not fully.
Yeah. Whereas I think the thing with Mother Mary is it's Johnny Guitar camp, it's Douglas Sirk camp, it's camp where the fact that everything is very artificial and stylized and an inch away from being actively ridiculous is not only not a hindrance to the emotional power of it, it's actually the engine of it.
Oh, it is. Everything is so big. Every line is so every line is written in poetics, and it's and it shows up from the start. Every single line that is read feels like a curse. It is basically every single line. It feels like each line is beautifully constructed of being half spat at the other. It's phenomenal.
I think that there is a specific moment where Anne Hathaway and Michaela Coel, who for the vast majority of this movie are the only 2 people on screen, they're talking about Mary, the Anne Hathaway character's support act, and Sam, the Michaela Coel character, says, I think, why is it? She's been all around Soho with her tits hanging out for Givenchy, and that line is so preposterous and so wonderful. I remember thinking in a moment, this is what all of those people who think Showgirls is legitimately good must be experiencing. This is what it's actually like to have that feeling.
It's important. It's wonderful. I mean, one of the things I love is that the implication from the start is that Michaela Coel is indulging in some form of witchcraft and has done this entirely out of spite against Anne Hathaway's character. And
Yes.
it's every time she speaks to her, you're just like, there is an unsaid 100 words of "I fucking hate you," and it is incredible. It's brilliant, and it's practically ritualistic kind of obsessive loving hatred. It's phenomenal.
And the fact that it feels like that's unspoken, despite the fact that Sam literally describes Mary as a cancerous tumor on her career, is kind of incredible. You do absolutely believe that that's just the tip of the iceberg of the bitterness between these characters.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about them as actors, as their characters' relationship, because I think one of the most immediate pleasures of Mother Mary is that you have two fantastic performers who each have like possibly the two most iconic movie star faces of our current age just go at each other for the whole 2 hours. And I think even if the film had nothing else to recommend it other than being an acting showcase for Hathaway and Cole, I would still recommend that you bought a ticket for this.
It's incredible. It's like this carefully constructed but wild dance between the two of them. Kind of, it's almost like a duel in dialogue. Again, where one of them doesn't really want to be dueling. That's one of the interesting things that Anne Hathaway's character is trying consistently. Kind of Mary is consistently trying to reach out and kind of she's desperate for something, anything. And just won't be given it because that's how Michaela Coel's character thinks she's treated her, and probably has.
So we've mentioned that Hathaway's Mary, whose stage name is Mother Mary, the title is also her character name, is a pop star. But Sam is the designer behind her most memorable looks, and they've been split apart for a while. And the film never quite nails down how they've moved apart. We just know that there is this reservoir of resentment that Sam has towards how Mary built her career essentially on the image that she made for her and that she never got the credit for that. And I think this is like deeply interesting because like I mentioned the marketing a bit back. It had those two character posters. It had Hathaway looking very ethereal, with "This is not a ghost story."
Yeah, lies, ding, 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 extremely loud, incorrect butter.
Okay, so see how you go with this next one. And then it had Cole looking very seductive with the tagline, "This is not a love story."
Maybe?
Yeah, you can't tell, can you?
It's deliberately left very ambiguous as to the nature of how close Sam and Mary were, or rather the nature of that. But there are implications, I think. There are a lot of implications throughout of whether, spoken or not, there is this deep longing between the two.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the 1-star review that gave me a little panic attack when I went in to see this film, I read it afterwards, and it was basically saying, this film is just cowardly for not making them an actual couple. And I don't know. I don't want to necessarily say that they were or they weren't an actual couple. It does feel like one of those like decades long relationships that two queer people sometimes have, where at the end of it you sort of ask them, so are you two like friends or are you dating? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, I mean, by the end, it's kind of, what are you? And the answer is, we're not. We're not
Yeah.
anything. But I do love how it's unspoken, because there is just, and then kind of also spoken later on when we get into the ghost stuff,
Yes.
because it's made more explicit, I think, in that moment. But it makes the void, the kind of chasm between the two, even greater, the fact that we do not know, and to the point that it does not matter. But it's the fact that what the ghost is and how it manifests itself makes you think, oh, there's something here. Whether or not it was spoken to one another, it's
Yeah.
there.
Yes, and we should get into that, not least because while the film has a very spooky, gothic, ominous tone from the beginning, once again, it is a film from the director of The Green Knight. It's the ghost aspect really starts to come into play with the arrival of FKA Twigs' character Imogen. And one of my favourite things in researching this podcast is the fact that the director of A Ghost Story and The Green Knight is an even bigger FKA Twigs nerd than me.
I mean, that's just wonderful, that is. I bet
Yeah.
he has like a personal 35mm copy of the Crow printed onto that. I bet he watches it every day.
He describes FK Twigs's album Magdalene, which I think is a very
Yeah.
apposite album title when we're talking about a film called Mother Mary, as being, and I quote, one of the best albums of at least the past 20 years.
It's FKA Twigs's character is fascinating because she's not in it much. I mean,
No.
her presence is felt throughout a lot of the film because of her involvement, but she appears prominently in one scene, and that scene is something. It is just, there's a lot of physical performance in the film, and that is one of the most notable examples of such. Is that there's a lot of physical performance by characters within it until you harm yourself.
Yes.
And that is a bit which is thematically one of the things the film is talking about. And in that scene, it's interesting that not only does she play a medium in that scene, but it's what follows is just the most. It's the most explicitly queer aspect of the film that we get to see, which kind of makes the subtext text. But it's a moment where you think, oh, that's the kind of film this is going to be now.
Yes. And it shouldn't have surprised me that he is such a Twigs fan, because it feels like a role that is written with such an understanding of her persona and her history, that what we see at the start of her cameo is very much the kind of Twigs that you get an impression of from interviews, a very sort of open-hearted, very sort of what she often says is often very wise and very sort of educated, but I think on screen she comes across as having this real kind of innocence and naivety that she's very good at projecting. I think it was probably the best thing about The Crow. I think listening back to the episode we did on The Crow, I think the freshness that Twigs brought to a character who's basically there to like date the male lead and then die is at least an interesting way of doing that. But then there's like, are you aware of where FK Twigs' stage name came from?
I am not.
I mean, the FKA is because there was someone else called Twigs, but the Twigs name in itself came from when she was doing dancing lessons. Apparently, like everyone used to say that every time she moved, they could hear like her bones just cracking like twigs. She has really noisy bones. So
Relatable.
when her cameo came to its conclusion, I did sort of think, Oh, that's what it must be like to be in a dance class with FKA Twigs.
Note to self: if I ever have the privilege of being in a dance class with FKA Twigs, hide the sharp objects.
Yes. Yeah. So this sort of escalates into something that defines the second half of the film. There is a sense that the bad feeling between Mary and Sam is more than just, you know, an old feud that needs to be relitigated. It's more even than perhaps a romantic breakup, that there is a sort of spirit that needs to be exercised here, which becomes more and more of a literal presence in the film.
It's the nature of the ghost in it as well, and the spirit is one of the most wonderfully original ideas, and is one of the most bizarrely kind of esoteric kind of approaches to creating a ghost in something. Although there are some parallels between the portrayal of the supernatural here and the really odd portrayal of the supernatural in another, even more camp film, which is Peter Strickland's In Fabric.
Yes!
For obvious reasons. I was going to mention that. It's the fact that the ghost's first appearance is one of my favorite things in the film because of what the origin of it is. In fact, a lot of it is spoken in extended, torturous metaphors. Specifically, some of them designed to play mind games with Mary. But it's interesting that Sam says, this is not a metaphor what I'm about to describe. When I saw you performing without me, I bit down on my tooth so hard that I crushed it.
Yes.
And had to pull it. Now, eventually, then I had to pull it out with pliers at home. He says, "No, I didn't do that. But I went to the doctor.
Yeah, I went to the dentist."
Yeah, which was incredible. It's kind of the fact that the origin of the ghost is it came out of her rotten, crushed tooth that she bit down on out of kind of a longing of frustration and anger and hatred for her.
Yes, and when you first see it, it's the morning after. There's this sort of tracking shot across the bed of the blood coming from her mouth across the sheets, and it ends in this thing on the floor. And the way it's shot, you can't quite make out what the thing is. It's clearly not this, but it reminds you almost of a miscarriage or a fetus or something.
Yes, which kind of adds to the whole. It kind of adds to the whole. Oh fucking hell! This is what the film is doing. It's kind of the entire film is from the start and basically admits itself to be an exorcism.
Yeah. And on one level, the way the ghost is portrayed from there on is like a sort of, it's like the glam version of a ghost story on one level. You know, once again, David Lowery is using a sheet to represent a ghost. He must be a huge fan of Whistle and I'll Come to You, and obviously I respect that.
Oh,
but
definitely.
It's also like, if he hadn't made a ghost story, I think he would have still done this, because the metaphor for this billowing red dress that seems to have an independent life as a sort of metaphor for the bad blood in between a designer and the pop star she dressed. I mean, it just hits every note, doesn't it? It's so perfect for this story. I wonder if he ever sort of thought, oh, will people think I'm just doing the ghost story thing again? And then just pressed through and thought, no, this is absolutely what this particular story has to have.
And it's the fact that not intentionally a pun, but it is important in the sense that it is fabric, is the fact that the ghost is so material. It's the fact that the ghost touches and enters is another thing. It enters through physical openings in the skin, and its possession of Mary, because that happens, is less of a typical spiritual possession and more of just something horrible inside that you could feel at all times. And combined with the fact that Mary has her anxieties about kind of her pop star image is real to her fans, there is no her underneath. And that is where the film gets paralleled with the classiest thing we have covered on here, I Saw the TV Glow, because
Yes.
of the ways in which she discusses feeling like she is hollowed out and she is nothing underneath. That stuff hit for me really, really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, before we sort of move out to the character stuff that Robyn started talking about there, we should give a shout out to Daniel Wurtzel, the artist who created the ghost in this and who does installation pieces that have fabric shapes that seem to be uncannily alive or physical, and is obviously just the perfect choice for doing this. But yeah, the psychology of Mary's character is really interesting because she's recovering from this onstage injury. We've seen her at the start in this great sort of abstract bit that I think works. I always like when films take a bit to have a sort of little video art montage in them, but the abstract bit at the start here is one of the best I've seen in years. But she's going up on this huge riser that sort of hovers above the heads of the crowd. And I was reminded of Billie Eilish. I'd seen Billie Eilish do this, and after I watched this film, I had the chance to see Billie Eilish do this again, thanks to James Cameron. But there's this talk of an accident. We see that she has this scar on her back that is the camera very pointedly picks out early on when she's getting changed, so you know that's going to mean something. And I think, again, it's the ambiguity of the bit. At no point did I think that Mary had consciously made a suicide attempt. But there's almost something willed about it. You get the sense there's something in her subconscious that would get up there and think, what would happen if I just fell?
It's true. I think that Pink thinks about every time that she ends up in one of those things which makes her fly about across the stage.
Yes.
She thinks, what if I just got loose? What if I died horribly here? I bet that the compulsion comes there because I was thinking about that. So I was thinking about it's the inevitable Pink incident that everybody talks about. Let me create one of these contraptions which launches me into the middle of fucking nowhere.
I mean, this is that you see a lot of early rock and roll movies, the smarter early rock and roll movies, the ones like Privilege or Performance, which look at that aspect of what a crowd invests in a performer. And in many ways, they're doing that because at that stage, the people making them were too old to have had a childhood as fans. They were looking at pop and rock through a very detached anthropological lens and saying, well, this is some weird new thing. What does it mean? And that sort of fades away. Eventually rock movies and pop movies become more about either biopics or reliving a kind of childhood memory of being a fan. This is the first film I've seen in ages that seems really driven by that kind of thought that you got from older filmmakers working in the hippie era, whether this is like a ritual, but what kind of ritual is it? Is it Dionysian? Is it sort of Gnostic? Is it, what are all these people who were clearly having a religious experience in the crowd? What is that? What need creates that? And I think the most telling part of it is that Mother Mary, when she asks Sam to make another dress for her, says not just no halos, which the halo has always been part of the looks that Sam has made for her, and that's obviously religious, but also no red. there is this constant link in art history between Mary Magdalene, the other Mary of the New Testament, and the colour red. She's always portrayed as the red-headed woman, and that was part of why early Christianity was so judgmental about a woman who, when you actually get round to reading the Bible, it's like, what did Mary Magdalene do to piss everyone off? I don't get it.
Which brings me to the inevitable point of the closest real-life analog for who Mother Mary is. And now I get to this point, it's Lady Gaga.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Is when we go through what her actual performance style is and what her costumes were, you realize there's a very direct analog here. Someone who also made a song about Mary Magdalene mentioned Bloody Mary is about that. So I'm making the connections here right now and kind of the pseudo-religious, pseudo kind of occult aspects of the whole image and the provocateur image. And again, we get into that with the costuming, including a glimpse of a costume at one point, which not enough people talk about. And I haven't seen anybody else mention, which is, let's talk about that safety pin dress.
Oh, yeah. That is interesting because there is that sort of industrial, not quite BDSM-y, but a bit Hellraiser-y, I guess, influence to a lot of Mary's costumes. There's the dress with the nails sticking out of her head where the nails form the halo, which I think is just great.
We see a very brief glimpse of that costume being applied at one point, or one of the costume involving like pins and all sorts of stuff, which we see a very brief glimpse of, and it kind of adds into kind of the mutual ritual aspect of it. This is what they have done together. This is how connected they are, is that the dress is pinned at every point into her skin. And we just get a quick glimpse of that, which is very Hellraiser, but it's kind of at the moment as this is how close they were.
Yeah. And it's telling that when Sam wears one of her own costumes, it's the nail headdress. That's the only one that she puts on. It's like that aspect of it that's about piercing, that's about scarification, that's about stigmata, if we're going all the religious way, is the one that really... And it does, it really does. That's the one that binds them together, I found it interesting that, I mean, obviously this film was conceived as a two-hander between these two characters, and it is that to a large part it remains so. But there was once, there was a draft of it very early on, according to Lowery, where you only saw those costumes in photos, and it was just like all present tense. There was no concert stuff. The only hints you got at Mary's past were like what we saw in photos and what Sam talked about. And I sort of see why he would have thought that could have worked, but I equally see why as soon as he saw the costumes by, Bina Daigler, as soon as he saw Daigler's costumes, he was like, oh no, we need to actually bring these on screen. We need to show them properly.
Yes, agreed. And there's also kind of I love the concept stuff because it's kind of, you want to experience what people are thinking of her. You want to see who Mother Mary is in the eyes of others. We'll show you, and we will show you in bombastic fashion. As my friend Mark said very brilliantly, it is A Star is Born meets A Dark Song. It is very much, this is it. There have been lots of pop star horror movies. No, I've not seen Smile 2. I know it is well regarded. It's kind of people saying, oh, Trap came out, Smile 2 came out. We've got these concept things. None of them have enraptured me in this is a pop star film where this fake fictional pop star. None of them have ever kind of given me the impression like this is something that someone somewhere will devote their life to in crazed obsession.
Yeah. And this is where the movie's specially written songs come to. It was one of the big points of the promotion, almost as heavy as, we've got Anne Hathaway and Michaela Coel in this, was that it has this new set of songs, some of which are Charli XCX, Jack Antonoff collaborations, some of which are by FKA Twigs. I think the closing song is Twigs, right? It really sounds
I believe so. But the important thing is they are all phenomenal.
I had a sort of different experience because now that it's finally becoming safe to admit it, I'm going to go out there and say I actually didn't like Brat that much.
That's fair. I enjoyed
it. I've liked some of Charli XCX's soundtrack work before. I think a soundtrack to Bottoms is smashing and really works very well in that film.
Yeah, I think her soundtrack to Wuthering Heights is not the greatest.
Well, that's the thing. I went into 2026 thinking, oh, there's a load of Charli XCX films coming out, and I don't want to do this. I like some of her stuff, but ever since she became Brat PLC and started hanging out with a load of New York hipster twats, I don't care anymore. So far, we're in May, and I've seen 2 films with Charli XCX's involvement this year, and it's like I was going out of my way to avoid this, and it's impossible.
There is a singular one that, even though it's kind of, I get the fatigue now with some of the stuff, even though I really liked Brat as an album, I will admit, and I particularly liked one of the songs nobody talks about, which is the song which she does as like tribute to her lost friend Sophie, obviously kind of iconic producer and musician, and it's which I think is one of the best songs on the album because it is just kind of a really sincere personal song, but it's kind of coming to this after thinking, I kind of went into this thinking, okay, I have recently seen Wuthering Heights, and despite me not having read the novel Wuthering Heights, also getting continuously pissed off that the second half of the novel never gets adapted. Kind of after that film made my piss boil, it's kind of, I was thinking, oh, come the fuck on, okay, Charli, please. I watched it thinking, what? Well, how could she still do it? And also, there is one other film I really want to see with her involvement, which is her involvement in the Faces of Death reboot, which is a movie I think I will adore from what I've heard about it. And I saw the trailers and I was thinking, oh, this is something. And it's for one of her films that she's been involved in, but the UK has just not got.
Yeah. I've resigned myself to the fact that I will end up covering either Faces of Death or I Want Your Sex, the new Gaga-esque film.
Oh, yeah. She's doing a Takashi Miike film.
Yeah. I mean, I can't fault her taste in films. I can't fault that at all. But yeah, I think having Charli and Jack Antonoff, whose work I think is unbelievably inconsistent, but still, it does make Mary's music immediately credible. And I think the fact that Twigs is in there as well, I think one of the things that I always said about Brass is if people had just held on another 6 months or so, FKA Twigs would have released Eusexual, which is a much better Back to the Club album.
You are onto something. Yes,
it makes sense to have them both like contributing to Mary's musical voice here, I think.
Yes, I think that's very true. It's very great. If I do obvious joking coming, I do think it's a bit fucked up. But whenever I hear Jack Antonoff's name, I'm like, you jacked who off?
Yeah, what's Anton done to yeah. But he's an odd guy, I find. It's like every now and then he will produce something like Kendrick Lamar's GNX or Midnights by Taylor Swift, I think is a perfectly good sounding album, and it makes it even more baffling when like the album after that, like listeners, if you doubt, if you think I'm being unreasonable towards Jack Antonoff, listen to I Can Do It With a Broken Heart by Taylor Swift and ask yourself if anyone could make that song sound weedier than Jack Antonoff had. Like, you could leave Audacity running in the corner of the rehearsal room and it would sound better than that.
It's yeah, I have come across this. Although the fact that we have criticized it, we have critiqued the Taylor Swift song means the hordes are coming.
Come through me. For my sins, I'm a Swiftie, and I know that people have this impression of Swifties where they're like, oh, they just think everything she does is perfect, and they don't think anything she does is problematic. And you think,
No.
what the fuck are you on about?
The reaction to her latest album was quite funny from the Taylor Swift part of the whole saying, okay, now we can't defend some of this shit.
I mean, I'm sort of easier on the life of a showgirl than a lot of people, but a lot of the album is designed to gaslight me into thinking that Travis Kelce is hot, and I will not do that.
Precisely. I'm just like, for fuck's sake, reread Hamlet.
Although I will say, in her defense, I like, there's a Todd in the Shadows episode where he's talking about the fate of Ophelia, and it's like, if all you're talking about is just a woman who drowns, you could have done anyone. You could have said, the fate of Virginia Woolf, and it's like, come the fuck on. If she compared herself to Virginia Woolf, you'd be even angrier.
That would have been fucked up. It's just like, yeah. To be fair, in regards to drowning, what you can do the fate of Sylvia Plath? That would just be foul.
You could do the fate of Jack from Titanic if that's all you want.
No, that's true. That is very, very true.
I feel like the fate of Virginia Woolf would be like, after she called out the Gaylors for sexualizing her friendships in the 1989 reissue liner notes, that would be exactly the wrong message to give out to the world.
Foulest possible thing.
Reactivated! Yeah. Oh god! One day we'll probably do an episode on Amsterdam, and I'll
the fate of Shirley Jackson. That's really unrelated. She didn't even drown. It's just worst possible contenders for the galas to come about.
But yeah, one sort of. I mean, I think the central relationship in this movie works so phenomenally well.
Yeah.
And you can tell that it works well because it sort of escapes the metaphor that it was designed to carry. Because one of the things I was thinking about on the drive home from this movie, one of the pleasures of going to cinema in Newcastle when you live in Middlesbrough is you do have a long drive home to think about this stuff. But I was thinking, is this kind of what Lowery thinks when, he makes a film and puts it out and people are like, oh, another Disney remake? Does he feel like Sam? Does he feel like the guy making all this art and then the mega star in the front gets the credit? And when I was researching this, I was delighted to discover that the answer is yes. That's exactly what he was thinking about.
Yeah, this is David Lowery's cinematic equivalent. He made this, but he doesn't actually go to open his chest with shares.
Yeah, he said he was on set. He came up with the idea when he was on set for The Green Knight, and he was taking phone calls from Disney about Peter Pan and Wendy, and he had the exact same feeling we were talking about at the start of the show, which is just, what is my artistic personality? What am I doing here? And so, he created this allegory of the superstar and the artiste. And I think when you hear that, it really does remind you how well this movie avoids didacticism. For a movie that is mostly two people in a room talking, for a movie that is clearly allegorical, even if you can't quite pin down straight away what it's an allegory for, it really goes to great pains to avoid being simplistic with this stuff.
I think we need to talk about the ending and what happens with that, because it is a lot.
You've mentioned the wound on the chest, and I mean, this is yet another sort of religious allegory. This is the old Catholic, I think general Christian, but specifically Catholics are big on it. The motif of the Sacred Heart of Jesus physically removing his heart from his chest, which has been it's one of Christianity's great gifts to horror cinema, really. Isn't it?
It's rather metal, I do think.
Yeah. And the heart is generally depicted with a lot of accoutrements, but including the crown of thorns, which is echoed in the headdress that's passed between Mary and Sam. So there's a lot of that resonance going on there.
There's something quite raw to kind of. There's this the way in which this is, it ends essentially, well, it doesn't end with this, but the climactic sequence of the film is this exorcism of the spirit within her, kind of making peace with it, and there is something to the fact that she cuts her hand, I believe, with the shears, and says, "No, it's not enough," and then kind of literally cuts open her chest and bares her heart. Is something.
This is when we were deciding to do this episode. I think I said in my email to you, I want to do it for this reason, this reason, this reason. Also, I woke up with this like cut on my fingertip. I cannot explain how I got. I was using my laptop and it was trailing blood all over. And I thought, where the hell did that come from? So that is an omen.
It's
an omen. To do the Mother Mary episode.
It was after watching with Lila, my girlfriend. She did turn to me, comforting me, and she turned to me, showed me the small scar she has on her finger, and said, "Okay, so we doing this or what?"
I did wonder where that anecdote was going to go. She turned to me, she took out the garden shears.
Like she pulled out the garden shears. Where it's like, we got a little bit in fabric goes out, and of course that fabric becomes a dress at the end as Hunter Schafer tells this story because at the end, kind of, Sam and Mary have split. They have made their peace with the fact that they have expelled their personal demons in this form. And then Hunter Schafer turns up because she's in this as the assistant to Sam. And this is her main scene in the film, and she delivers this monologue, kind of describe as kind of this storytelling thing. Which means that the film ends in a very similar way, albeit in a slightly less bleak way, but in similar ways, to Jane Schoenbrun's "We're All Going to the World's Fair." It is whether or not what we're seeing is true or not, the story that is being told is possibly a story being told to comfort someone who will never know.
Yeah, I see that. I had another couple of associations with it. I think when Hunter Schafer first appears, she's sort of trailing around Sam wordlessly. And it must be said, I mean, if I had one slight nitpick with this film, is that there are a lot of very good actresses who were basically subliminal images in this, you know. I don't think it's had studio interference. If it does, imagine what the fuck it was like originally. But
it featured like real. We've seen where Anne Hathaway really got herself open for it.
Yes, where it just all went Chris Burden for a bit.
The bit which you actually like in the dance sequence. Speaking of which, everyone and their nana wants to do a possession freakout sequence. Fuck off. Mother Mary does its own one.
100%. Yeah, I mean, there's the actual possession freak out sequence, and there's the one where Mary demonstrates the dance moves, which is clearly designed to parallel that. But it's just her like throwing her body into these shapes with just like heavy breathing and crunches on the floorboards as the soundtracks, and it's in many ways more horrifying than all of the horror stuff.
I was speechless after seeing that, to the point that if I wasn't, I'd have probably turned around and said, unscripted, she just did that.
But yeah, Hunter Schafer's in it for a bit in a wordless role for a start, and at first I thought, oh, that's quite cute. She's like the Igor to Sam's Frankenstein. And then it got to the end, and I thought, no, that's not it at all. Hunter Schafer is lucky in waiting for Godot. You spent the whole play waiting for them to talk, and then it comes, and it just keeps going forever.
It is, and it is one of the most affecting moments in the film. And it's this beautiful kind of storytelling which she does about kind of what is going to happen at the concert when the dress is complete. And the thing is, we never know if this is true. We never know if this is real, or if it's just a story being told because it's the ideal, perfect way to end this story, and she'll never know because they're never going to meet again.
Yeah, and I think throughout there is this sort of, like, you could read this as a sort of foliage if you want. I don't know if it gets richer from doing that. I don't think it does. But every time we step outside of this kind of one place that Sam and Mary are stuck in, there's a question mark over how real some of this is. There's that wonderful early bit where Sam says that one of Mary's dresses was designed to like fall away and reveal her covered in honey, which I thought was like, it's obviously a sort of a reference to an attempt to one-up Lady Gaga's famous meat dress, but you also sort of listen to it and think, that didn't happen, though, did it? That's not real.
A bit later on, where you hear something described, it's one of the things is also Sam speaks in endless metaphors, and I love this. And some people can't abide by it, but it's wonderful. It's the fact that this is another mind game that she's playing, and to the point that Mary said at some point, "Can we go back on this metaphor? You're leading me to say things I don't want to say because you've tortured this for so long." But there is a detail to that where her first suggestion for a dress is a dress made up of all of her previous dresses that tears away and leaves her nude. And it's this beautiful description and kind of wonderful, and it's her true self revealed. But it's funny that her first response is, well, the advertisers are going to leave. We're going to cut the camera, and she says, fuck them, I don't care.
And it's funny that the way that like the initial plan is to like strip away the artifice and reveal who Mary is, and that's obviously like something Sam wants because she wants to get sort of some sort of honesty out of Mary, which she feels she's been denied. But it's also a popular pop star move, you know, hey, this album's the back to basics one, this is the real me. It's one very subtle thing that I think made me convinced that, oh yeah, David Lowery knows what's going on in the modern pop game, is that when you see the younger support act that Mary is uneasy about, the one who Sam describes as having a tit spilling out in Givenchy all over Soho, you are primed to expect like a complete phony. And you get that, but you get a complete phony performing authenticity rather than Mary's sort of army of backup dancers and self-martyring big gymnastic routines. It's just a woman with an acoustic guitar. And I think the joke is that that's the fakest thing you can be in mainstream pop.
It's in the midst of that kind of heartbreaking final stretch of the film, just that quick cutaway to the guitar is unreasonably funny.
Yeah. Do you feel like that shot's fired at Gracie Abrams?
I do think it is. It's just like it's as with people on all social media. I was thinking, just watch Mother Mary, movie's so good I had to block Gracie Abrams.
As we wind down, do you want to know what artists were on David Lowery's writing playlist for this?
I would love to.
So, no surprise, Charli XCX and FKA Twigs were there. There was also Saint Vincent, who Anne Hathaway spoke as being a particular influence on her performance, along with Beyonce. Taylor Swift, obvs. Halsey.
Yes, makes sense.
Lord.
Yes, also makes sense.
Robyn.
Oh, me. That's fucked up. I don't make music.
Yeah, but in the future, he's reached forward and
reached
got
forward.
his debut album. Yeah.
Awesome.
James Blake.
That one doesn't ring a bell for me. I know all the rest, obviously, and all of them make sense. That name doesn't connect in my brain for me, I fear.
You might have heard some of Blake's stuff as a producer rather than as an artist in his own right. I think he works a fair bit with Kendrick Lamar these days.
Yeah.
But he also, in the early 2010s, he had a career as a solo artist, and he made stuff that I can see the influence of it in Mary's music. It's very delicate and personal, but it's also like completely electronic and artificial in a really unapologetic way. So I think it's it's got that going for it. The two names that made me slightly fall out of my chair, PJ Harvey.
I'm gonna say this so honestly. I thought you were about to say P. Diddy, which scared me so much.
And the one that I was there that I thought, oh, that's why I liked the movie so much. I'm clearly David Lowery. He also said Aldous Harding.
Oh, that's another one I don't know, I fear.
Right. She is very, very off-brand in terms of like the sound of this movie. She's more of a sort of an eccentric kind of folk singer-songwriter. She's got a big fondness for Neil Young. She has this very high sort of Kate Bushy voice. She wears the most elaborate hats. I remember when she first broke through, there was a joke about her whole aesthetic is like the singing Babadook.
I approve.
I think, yeah, even if you're not into the music, you would like the image. But I love
I'll probably
Aldous
be
Harding.
into the music. I'll probably be into the music.
Yeah, I think she's great, and I was really sort of pleasantly surprised to see you get a call out there. So yeah, mix all that together with a few of the films we've referenced today, which have included In Fabric, Showgirls, Waiting for Godot,
The Crow several times.
The Crow, yes. I felt like I had this sort of very amused realization at the end when Hunter Schafer is describing the greatest song ever written. Oh, maybe David Lowery's a big fan of Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Which, again, I have not seen, unfortunately, as someone who dearly loves the first two Bill and Ted movies, especially the bits where they say slurs. I'm shocked to say I have not yet seen the third Bill and Ted movie, and I know I will be into it. I've just not seen it.
Lowery's own list of inspirations, I think, a bit less up and down than mine. There's no Showgirls here, but he said Persona, Autumn Sonata, The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and Her Lover, Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula.
Megalopolis.
We can't just talk about Megalopolis.
I know we can't.
Every week. Portrait of a Lady on Fire, The Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant.
Obviously.
The Red Shoes, obviously. Yeah. Eyes Wide Shut. And, of course, Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour, which they apparently watched incessantly on set.
I can believe that. I can very much believe that.
It's a good mix.
It's a good mix. It's a good mix. It's when you mentioned Persona, I was thinking, oh yeah, no shit.
I know, because I didn't think of Persona, and as soon as he said that, I thought, how the fuck did I not realise this is influenced by Persona?
Yeah, he was burging his man the entire time.
He burgs my man until I Persona.
That is an insane phrase of words which will probably make someone who works at Criterion keel over and die.
Yeah, I can sort of feel the industry blacklisting me the longer this podcast goes on. Yeah,
The BFI is going to be pissed.
yeah, they're going to ask for their money back. I realise the answer will probably be yes, hundreds. But any other observations before we move on?
The answer is probably yes, hundreds, but there's so much kind of swirling about this film. Other than the fact that right at the beginning, I appreciate the first scene we see of the ghost. I appreciate that it looked a little bit beware of the blob, which I do appreciate. It's blobby. I like a blobby ghost. It's important.
Yes, it's Mary's Gelgards have crossed from the antimatter universe.
There's nothing left of her. But beyond the persona, there's nothing left. She's Omega.
God, you're right.
It's true. It's better than what Russell did in his movie.
I think that's the natural end for a pop screen episode on Mother Mary when we decide it's actually a remake of the Three Doctors.
Yeah, it's either Doctor Who reference or it's Travis Scott. Got him in! Got him in!
So yes, Robyn, tell people where they can find you and your work.
Yes, you can find me on socials. I'm Robyn Adams on Letterboxd if you want to see my deeply dubious film opinions. And you can find me at Real Robyn Adams on Instagram and Blue Sky, which is where I occasionally post either my own creative work or, again, more deeply dubious opinions on general things. You can find announcements on what I'm doing. You can look on YouTube. My channel's Robyn Adams if you want to, or at Robyn Adams She Freak if you want to see my film work, of which there is a handful and will hopefully be more soon. Hopefully I'm going to work on some more projects in the near future. And you can, on a random note from Music Connections, you can see me in Castration Movie Anthology 3 Year of the Hyena when that eventually comes out later this year with a fuck ton of musicians in, as with the rest of the Castration Movie saga.
Pop screen episode when?
I mean, part 3 has Ada Ruck from Black Dresses, so it's a potential. But if you get me on it, I'll be biased because I'm in the fucker.
Yeah, I feel like I did not predict this becoming a problem when I started this podcast.
That is unfortunately the issue. Okay, it's like, I believe with the Moon is a hologram as well. I believe that has some musicians on the cast as well. So it's some of them fairly notable from what I can tell. Wow. So it's one where I'm thinking, it's like when I write for the Geek Show, and occasionally I think with some of the stuff, it's just like, oh, do you want to review that one? It's just like, I don't know. I know that person very well. I might be biased.
This is the race that's on. You know, who's going to be the first, second, third pop screen hosts who are going to be in a movie that qualifies for pop screen? I like this very much.
That is true. I'm going to be honest. It's either going to be you or me who gets involved in something. I mean, I'm wondering, oh shit, the Estranged Gospel qualifies very vaguely.
Who's in?
I mean, Aoife Josie Clements of Ravine Angel, kind of Canadian musician.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. So yeah, probably us two first, but I'm sure Rob can find some very obscure hardcore punk singer to be in one of his films as well. I feel like he can.
He can do that, yeah.
Yeah. As for me, I've got a website at Graham Williamson Films where you can find out all about new music videos I made, new creative projects, films, exhibitions, anything that's going on. You can also find me on, Letterboxd is the primary social media site I'm on because it's the last good one. Find me on that just by searching for Graham Williamson. I also have an Instagram at Graham W Films, which I occasionally remember to update. Now, next month we're starting a theme month. We haven't done a theme month in ages, but we are doing autobiopics. What happens when pop stars play not just a character based on themselves, but themselves in movies? And we'll be kicking that off with the film where Pharrell Williams played Pharrell Williams, but as a Lego man. And if you're confused, imagine how myself and Mark Harrison felt when we watched it piece by piece. That will be out in a fortnight's time. You can also get bonus episodes by going to www.patreon.com/The Geek Show, as well as myself and Mark Cunliffe's other podcast, which we are I think as we record this, we are just about to launch the first episode tomorrow. Our arts and culture podcast, which has been classily titled The Arts Hole. We too have a restraining order out from the concept of class. But we'll be back on this feed in a couple of weeks' time with Piece by Piece. I've been Graham.
And I've been Robyn.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.